Paralympic sport has transformed thousands of lives.
I'm very proud of everything I've been able to achieve, but I think I'm more proud of the person that I had to become in order to do it.
From humble beginnings, the Paralympic Games are now big business.
We're here to do a job, and that is to win medals. It's win at all costs, almost.
If you get a medal, you get money. And so those that do better get more.
It's now the third biggest sporting event on the planet, with tens of millions of dollars in revenue.
Focus. I am here to run my own race.
Inside the Paralympics, a scandal is erupting that could destroy the integrity of the Games.
You're telling me to turn a blind eye to this. We're wanting to put that feel-good, inspirational image out there to the world that these athletes are to be admired and not put under scrutiny. We've been waiting for journalists to catch up on this for a very long time.
After a 6-month investigation, we found the rules are being bent and broken.
You can't call someone with a disability a cheater. It doesn't happen.
Knowing they cheated, yeah, you're going to be angry.
Do you take any responsibility for the cheating?
Yeah. I never wanted to put things under the carpet.
Genuine Paralympians are missing out on their chance to win because of a deeply flawed system. And they're now calling for urgent reform.
I have cerebral palsy with quadriparesis. I struggle with tying laces on my shoes and just walking in general. I can just trip over my own shadow.
At the age of 3, Madison Elliott learned to swim as a form of therapy.
It was a definite escape from dry land, as I like to say. It just became my happy place.
By 17, she'd won 9 Paralympic medals, including 4 gold. Like all Paralympians, Madison Elliott was assessed and placed in a sporting class based on how her impairment affects her performance. The International Paralympic Committee is responsible for the 14 different swimming classes. It's complex, but it's meant to level the playing field for athletes with all kinds of disabilities or impairments.
The classification that I was put in was 2 limbs affected, so it could mean right arm, right leg, or left arm, left leg. And then you've got people that are in higher classes who have less impairments, and then people in lower classes who have more impairments.
When you get classified, what are the classifiers looking for?
They look for the balance of your body in the water to see how your legs will compare when you relax in the water. I can catch with my left hand, but I can't close my right hand, and so water would go through my fingers.
Are you supposed to put in maximum effort?
Yes, they just want to see your ability at a fast pace, and they always expect you to do it at your 100% best.
Classification doesn't always work that way. There's an advantage in competing against athletes with more significant impairments. The classification process can create an incentive to underperform, even exaggerate an impairment. Athletes, coaches and parents can game the system to increase the chance of winning. This is the big taboo of Paralympic sport. Is it hard or easy to exaggerate a disability during classification, would you say?
It is very easy to exaggerate in a classification. And there are people who are just doing it because they're not winning in their classification. They want to compete in a classification that they can win in. You can see how young I was there too.
This one is you.
Small and tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are the tiniest. Moving classes can make or break a Paralympic career.
She's going to smash her own world record. Elliott ahead of Madison.
At her peak, Madison Elliott was briefly moved to a less impaired class.
I would have had no chance of making the Paralympics in Rio that following year. That would have been basically my career down the drain.
She was moved back to her original class. She won 5 medals in Rio, including gold in the 50-metre freestyle. Had she swum the same time in the other class, Madison Elliott would have come dead last.
I felt I was unbeatable after those games. I felt I was in the best shape. I had the goal of making 5 Paralympics.
In 2015, the world governing body for Paralympic sport investigated 16 swimmers suspected of deliberately swimming slowly during classification. Madison Elliott was one of them. Did you ever intentionally misrepresent your ability in classification?
No, I did not, and I stand true to that word.
Did you ever cheat?
No, I will never cheat in my life. If I've ever been asked to cheat, I will not cheat.
The International Paralympic Committee said at the time it didn't have enough evidence to take action against any of the athletes it investigated, including Madison Elliott. By then, it was too late. She'd already been branded a cheat.
I just wanted to crawl into a hole, not come back out. Wanted to hand all my medals back in that I had won, but I've had to just move on with my life.
Reclarification on that, the world record.
Another Australian athlete investigated and cleared by the International Paralympic Committee was gold medalist Amanda Fowler.
Amanda Fowler there in lane 1 for Australia.
Amanda Fowler is a controversial figure in Paralympic sport. Her Paralympic career has been intensely scrutinised. She's switched sports and classifications several times. Here she is as a 9-year-old speed skater. She won national titles in non-disabled short track speed skating.
First race.
Amanda Fowler moved to parasport in her early teens.
Fowler has been really impressive.
When she was part of our development program, she suffered from, this is what we are aware of, intellectual disability and technical visual impairment.
Let's see her through to the wall.
In 2011, she competed internationally as an intellectually impaired swimmer.
Winner is Amanda Fowler.
She was a breaststroker, and they had a breaststroke event for her classification in London in 2012, and they took her over to compete at the Games. She never said anything about having other disabilities to me in the time I was friends with her.
3 years later, she switched classes, this time competing as a vision-impaired runner. This surprised her friend Madison Elliott.
She's standing there with a white walking stick, and we were like, unless she had like a deteriorating disease that we knew nothing about, we only knew her as the intellectual athlete.
Months later, Amanda Fowler no longer used a white cane. By 2016, she'd changed her name to Amanda Reed. She was now classified as a physically impaired swimmer with cerebral palsy.
I've classified thousands of athletes with cerebral palsy. When I saw the ice skating video, I could not recognize cerebral palsy in her.
Professor Ken Richter was a Paralympic classifier and specialises in treating those with cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy is a stable motor disease originating in the brain that occurs around birth. And it's non-progressive. It doesn't go in and out, in and out. She's got a pretty good stride there. And she may have a very mild CP.
Professor Richter says he can't be certain about Amanda Reed's diagnosis without examining her. But he says the circumstances around her classification changes are concerning.
I'm very perplexed. I haven't seen in my career somebody with a stable neurologic condition that gives such a fluctuating performance. And I would love to see the reasoning of the classifiers that classified her.
Amanda Reed declined to comment. Without seeing her medical records, we can't confirm independently exactly what her impairments are. Her lawyer told us we had been provided with information which is not supported by fact. In 2015, Amanda Reed switched again to paracycling.
Because of my cerebral palsy, this side of my bike doesn't work, so the gears don't work on that side or the brakes.
As a physically impaired cyclist with cerebral palsy, Amanda Reed finally fulfilled her Paralympic dream. She won a silver medal at the Rio Games in 2016 and took home the gold in Tokyo.
And here is Peter Brooks going for gold for Australia.
Another gold medal winner, Peter Brooks, coached Amanda Reed when she was a junior cyclist with a vision impairment.
She was very young at the time, and she just wanted to follow this dream of being a para-athlete and representing her country. And I had no idea she came back to the cycling program as a CP rider. I found that very interesting.
Why?
Well, there was no mention that she had cerebral palsy when she was part of the Parramatta Junior program. Now, she may have, and it may not have come up, but you think it would have come up.
We can't know for certain whether Amanda Reed does or doesn't have cerebral palsy. AusCycling says her medical records were provided to classifiers. The International Paralympic Committee says it's not uncommon for athletes to change classes. Paralympics Australia told us it's satisfied she met all the requirements for her classification. We can't be sure if Amanda Reed fully understood the rules of classification. Peter Brooks believes there's a broader issue at play. He sees a growing number of athletes with hardly any impairment competing in the Games.
The whole idea of the Paralympic program is for these people with a disability to overcome the adversity of that disability and excel in their sport. They've lost the plot. Every rider should just ride one-handed.
Peter Brooks won gold in the least impaired cycling class in Athens.
I was in the LC1 classification for upper limb disability. I've got a small left hand born that way with a full working hand. In the Paralympic road race, athletes with a genuine disability in certain sports are being pushed out of the sport because they find it so difficult and demoralising to compete against people that should not be in that classification. I'm disgusted, like I am. It should never happen.
Cheating at the Paralympics has a long history. No one expected a scandal like the one that erupted after the Sydney Games in 2000.
When I set you up on positions of who you want, stay with that person and stay with them. Right? You're not doing it.
The co-captain of Australia's intellectually disabled basketball team, Brett Wilson, was playing to win at those games.
I think I was about 20 years old, about 70 kilos, a lot fitter. I could dunk back then and that, so little 6-foot little red nut jumping over the hoop.
All eyes were on gold medal winners Spain when it was revealed that 10 of their 12 players had faked their disability.
The whole thing was a farce, really. We stood there and listened. It was a false medal.
Knowing they cheated, yeah, you're going to be angry. Yeah, I was pretty pissed.
In what seemed like a decisive move, the governing body banned all intellectually disabled athletes from the next 2 Paralympic Games.
Once that sort of has been taken away from you, it's sort of, do I get out of bed now? What do I do? I just started putting the weight on and sort of kept on going that way.
The scandal here at the Sydney Games was an early sign of just how widespread the crisis would become. We've spoken to dozens of Paralympic classifiers, coaches and athletes. Most didn't want to talk on the record. Some were so concerned about the classification crisis and the reluctance by sporting authorities to deal with the issue, they've decided to speak out.
I was being told to stand down, to turn a blind eye effectively, to let it go.
Jane Buckley is a former chief classifier and medical director of the Australian Paralympic team. She hasn't spoken publicly about this issue before.
I know for a fact it wasn't just basketball. It was happening across different sports. There'd been internal memorandums that had gone to the sports that were concerned to say, we have actually got a bit of a problem here.
We've discovered an internal document from the International Paralympic Committee, and the findings are pretty staggering. For the first time, we reveal publicly what the IPC found, that 69% of the medals awarded to intellectually disabled competitors went to athletes who didn't meet the proper requirements to compete at the Sydney Games.
69%. I never knew the percentage. That's quite appalling. It's just simply not a good look. They do not want their brand or their image affected by the fact that there was what looks like on paper a systemic misrepresentation that was going on with a particular group of athletes. It would affect sponsorship, it affects credibility, and we're wanting to put that feel-good, inspirational image out there to the world that these athletes are to be admired and not put under scrutiny.
Jane Buckley says she raised the alarm about classification problems multiple times. She says she took her concerns right to the top of Australia's governing body.
There was a deep reluctance on the side of the Australian Paralympic Committee to do something about it. I was astounded. I can remember thinking at the time, oh my goodness, this organisation is more concerned about medals than doing the right thing. It was like, you've got to give in. And it's like, no, I'm not going to. I refused. It's almost like an inside joke now that for certain classes, there has been this ongoing misrepresentation. And as a classifier, you have to be aware that it's happening the whole time.
Paralympics Australia said it doesn't condone cheating, has no knowledge of misconduct related to classification, nor is it involved in any misconduct. After nearly 3 decades in Paralympic sport, Jane Buckley chose to walk away.
The level of misrepresentation that started to take place after 2009 was quite mind-blowing in some sports, and particularly the sport that I came from, which was swimming.
As our investigation unfolded, it became clear this was a global story. We travelled to London, where a UK parliamentary inquiry examined this issue.
The integrity of the Paralympic movement is at stake.
The system of classification is open to abuse and is being abused at the moment.
The 2017 House of Commons inquiry heard new allegations of cheating, and it exposed flaws in the system. The International Paralympic Committee refused to appear,
But the dirty secret finally burst into public view.
Where we are now in the Paralympic movement, it's medals, it's money, it's sponsorship, it's media coverage. It's somebody pretending they can do less than they can.
In this IPC document from last year, high-ranking officials from all over the world describe in shocking detail how intentional misrepresentation has infected Paralympic sport. Classification tends to promote cheating, one writes. A swimming official says one of the greatest concerns is the increasing incidence of intentional misrepresentation and the sense of powerlessness to do anything about this. There are no repercussions for those who cheat, she writes. Athletes and coaches are aware of this and are using it to their advantage. An official concludes that the system does not work.
The classification system is open to rorting and is rorted, and there are people who cheat. They're away in this 200-metre event.
Former performance manager with UK Athletics, Catherine Periak, wrote a scathing submission to the House of Commons inquiry.
I was deeply disappointed in the classification system in athletics. At that time, immensely open to manipulation, immensely flawed, not consistent, not transparent.
In the lead-up to the Beijing Games, UK Athletics recruited a 15-year-old who'd only ever competed in non-disabled sport. Her name was Rebecca Chin.
We're on our way to a small English town to meet former Paralympian Rebecca Chin. She only competed once, but her performance triggered a huge classification scandal. She was stripped of her medal, and we want to know why.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, really nice to meet you. Do you want to come in?
Thank you.
I just mean it all just happened so quickly. I literally just fell into it. Things just snowballed. I didn't understand about classifications and the way disability sport works.
As a teenager, Rebecca Chin had hyperflexible ankles, a relatively minor impairment.
Do you consider yourself a Paralympian?
I definitely am a Paralympian. But in day-to-day life, I don't class myself as having a disability.
At the Beijing Games, Rebecca was told she had cerebral palsy. She was moved to a more impaired class.
Yeah, it was a big surprise. I was a kid and they were these qualified medical people.
And in hindsight, do you have cerebral palsy?
There's no reason for me to think that I have cerebral palsy.
What exactly did that mean in terms of your medal prospects?
The consequence of me being moved was that it massively bumped up my ranking. And I actually broke the world record a few times while I was competing.
What did your competitors think?
I was obviously new, I was young, and then I became their competition and that changed things a little bit.
Australian Amanda Fraser was one of those competitors.
I threw everything into Beijing, I really did. My goal was winning that gold medal and bringing it home for my family.
All of a sudden, Amanda, who has cerebral palsy, had to compete against Rebecca Chin.
That meant that I wasn't going to win a gold medal. I was no chance of winning at all.
Is that because she's a better athlete?
No, she doesn't have cerebral palsy.
Rebecca Chin competed in 2 events in Beijing. She won silver in the discus, beating Amanda Fraser.
My first emotion was cheater, 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 and I kept chanting cheater throughout Rebecca's final throw. And then we were taken in one direction and Rebecca was taken in another.
They actually took me to sit me down with the classifiers to let me know I'd been declassified. They were watching the discus and they said that I didn't function the way they expected me to.
Rebecca Chin was only 16 when she was disqualified and forced to give up her silver medal.
Did you try to cheat?
I didn't try to cheat in the slightest, and I still don't believe that I cheated. I was badly led.
In the 100-metre event,
Catherine Periak shared an apartment with Rebecca in Beijing.
She'd get up in the morning and do a lot of exercise, calf raises, step-ups, simple exercise. It's a well-known technique that you would do before you go into classification that magnifies the amount of impairment that an athlete has. Away in the 400 metres.
The IPC didn't clarify whether this practice is banned, but told us it can trigger an investigation.
She said her coach had told her to do this before classification. I felt powerless to intervene because I should have, yes, I regret it. I felt intimidated. To accuse anybody of cheating is a horrible thing.
Before my classifications, I was told to fatigue myself and to do some exercises. Looking back, it is so frustrating because I know that that is not how you're supposed to conduct yourself. All I knew was what I was told by people who I was looking up to at the time, people who were in charge, who'd been in the system for so long.
So you've been doing a lot of exercise now?
Amanda Fraser says members of the Australian athletic team were also instructed to fatigue themselves before classification in Beijing.
You were taught to exert yourself and be fatigued and I guess be the worst version of yourself at the time.
So you were actually told to fatigue yourself before classification?
Yeah.
Is that
every time? Probably. Yeah, to a point, yeah.
So that's out in the open?
Yes, yeah.
You're coached to do that?
Yes, yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah, everybody does it.
And what do you think about it?
I think it's kind of just accepted, I guess. And I think that with cerebral palsy, it's very easy to do. But obviously a person like me, I'm always going to try and be the best that I can be.
After her Paralympic career was cut short, Rebecca Chin went on to compete as a non-disabled rower for Great Britain.
I feel like the Paralympics was my introduction getting into the world of sport, which really led me to my actual athletic career, which was able-bodied rowing. I had quite a fight in my brain to decide how open to be, because I think that we all need to be open and honest about what's going on, because it needs to be opened up so it can stop.
The Paralympic Games has become a global industry. The better the performances, the bigger the glory, the more money flows in.
Most of the sports systems that are funded are to deliver medals. The sponsors that have put in for the Games, they have a return on investment and, again, an expectation of delivering on that investment, delivering medals on that investment. So the performances just took off.
At the elite sporting level, national teams will always push boundaries in order to win. In parasport, this includes poaching athletes from non-disabled competition.
Many times we've talent ID'd an athlete by watching them walk, and with a trained eye you go, they might have cerebral palsy, for example. Did you know you're eligible? So it's so small that the general population wouldn't even notice the impairment, but there is a significant classifiable impairment there.
So how common is it to talent ID athletes in able-bodied competitions?
Very common. I used to say to everyone in triathlon, if someone's walking a bit funny, tell me. Because then we look and see why are they walking a bit funny, and is it an eligible impairment? Are they classifiable?
The IPC says in recent years, as Paralympic sport has become more professional, a small number of athletes and parents have struggled to come to terms with the increased competition at the Games. Rather than embrace the competitive nature of parasport, they've instead questioned the classification of their competitors. We've come to Switzerland to meet Javier Gonzalez. He ran the world governing body, the International Paralympic Committee, for 15 years. He admits cheating was a problem during that time.
Hello, how are you?
Mr. Gonzalez.
Hi.
After months investigating this story, we finally got to sit down with him. It's the first time he's spoken publicly about this issue.
We had what is called cheating in classification. Yes, it was a problem or an issue. The leaders of the different nations or coaches and the administrators and everyone knew that this was something that the IPC was concerned about.
Do you take any responsibility for the cheating?
Yeah. I mean, with the CEO is the one who stops the bucket. You know, it's a very lonely place sometimes, you know? But yes, ultimately, you know, if something has failed somewhere, I never wanted to put things under the carpet.
One of the Australian athletes we spoke to, she said it's easy to cheat in classification.
I mean, it's easy to cheat. I don't think it's easy, but if somebody wants to do it, I'm sure that they can do it.
In your time, was there enough that was done to address the problem?
I don't know. I don't know if there is always enough.
In Australia, we've uncovered more classification issues in paracycling. We're a couple of hours out of Sydney and we're about to meet a woman who's very important to this story. She's agreed to talk to us about a cyclist in the Paralympics. She says she has information that could have disqualified him from the Tokyo Games. That athlete is her former partner. Thanks for agreeing to talk to us.
Yeah, well, I want to help. I want to do the right thing. You know, well, Stuart and I met in 2009. He pretty much moved in with me within the first 2 weeks.
In January 2014, Stuart Jones was riding his bike along the highway when he clipped a parked car and crashed. His then partner, Sandy Crisius, rushed to be with him at hospital.
He had a fractured skull and some injuries to his hands. They said there was a possibility that he wouldn't walk again, but because it wasn't a complete spinal injury, they could never tell how much swelling will improve, you know, the feeling and his ability to walk.
Within the first year, Stuart Jones defied medical predictions. He was back on the bike and in April 2015 rode in a 100-kilometre charity event. 3 months later, he was racing with a local club.
Good job, Stu. Good work! People were just so blown away by his ability on the bike. He had returned to racing strong and if not better than what he was before the accident.
Towards the end of 2015, Stuart Jones began exploring whether he could compete in paracycling.
When Stuart sort of went higher up in the grades in the local club racing, he wasn't winning as much. And he had heard somewhere that his accident may qualify him to get into paracycling.
Stuart Jones set his sights on the trike class. This is a division for para-athletes who can't ride a two-wheel bike due to lack of balance or severe restrictions in pedalling. It's up to the athletes to know and comply with these classification rules. In February 2017, Stuart Jones was still competing on a regular bike. Then, in May, he won the Paracycling Road Nationals on a trike.
So I said to him, why are you riding this? You don't know how to ride it. And he's like, well, it's the only way I can get into paracycling because the normal bicycle classifications, they were too fast for him.
In July, Stuart was again racing on two wheels with his local club. Lawyer and cyclist Jennifer Short raced often against Stuart Jones.
You have two wheels at the back and one may lift. More so than...
When Stuart first got a trike, there were a number of rides where he would ride a bike and then a trike and then a trike and then a bike.
In October 2017, Stuart Jones raced on a bike with his Newcastle club.
I remember the race against Stuart in October 2017. Stuart was a very strong rider at that race. You have to be able to lay the bike into the corners. You have to be able to get out of the saddle and sprint, which if you have an issue with balance, getting out of the saddle can be problematic.
3 months later, he won the Paracycling Road Nationals in Victoria on a trike. The following month, he was back on his two-wheeler, riding 40 kilometres with friends.
Did he ever appear to have any issues with balancing a bicycle?
No, Stuart never had any issues with balance that I saw when he was riding a bike.
Any issues around safety?
No, Stuart never rode unsafely on a bike. He didn't seem to struggle with his bike handling skills in any way.
Sandy Crisius is a former internal affairs investigator with New South Wales Police. She says she only realised at a paracycling event in January 2018 that her then fiancé was breaking the rules.
Go, Stuart! I said, are you okay? Like, you're limping. And surprisingly, his response was that, oh, well, I'm at paracycling, I need to look disabled.
He was putting on a limp?
He was putting on a limp, yes. Stuart's ability to ride...
Sandy says she and Stuart Jones discussed his Paralympic potential with an Australian cycling official.
They said to him that he would most likely be offered a spot on the Australian paracycling team. So he was pretty ecstatic about that. I kind of butted in on the conversation. I just said, oh, but Stuart can ride a two-wheeler bike. And her response was, which I remember quite clearly, was, no, he can't. And then Stuart kind of indicated to me, you know, stop talking.
Did you have any misgivings about this whole situation?
Extremely. I was so uncomfortable with it. It definitely had to be a secret within the paracycling community.
Oz Cycling said none of its current or former staff would seek to undermine classification, or were aware that Stuart Jones could race on a two-wheeled bike.
Here he is.
Yeah.
Stuart Jones was invited to join the Australian paracycling team.
Shows that people with impairments, the only thing stopping them is themselves.
He didn't win a medal in Tokyo, but did receive an award for sportsmanship.
What a beautiful moment.
Incredible sportsmanship, cheering on his fellow athletes. And
what do you think about that?
That's not the Stuart I know.
Stuart Jones and Sandy Crisius broke up in acrimonious circumstances. He did not respond to our questions. His lawyer said it wouldn't be appropriate to comment because of ongoing defamation proceedings dealing with allegations similar to those raised by Four Corners. The court heard Stuart Jones switch to paracycling after having several accidents while attempting to ride a two-wheel bike.
I want to see genuine, people that are classified in the right categories. I'm surprised, very, very surprised that we're here today and that Stuart's still on the Australian paracycling team.
The world governing body for Paralympic sport is now reviewing classification, but there are fears it won't go far enough.
There are still athletes currently who are misrepresenting their abilities, not only in this country, but throughout the world. It's problematic because they are protected.
That trying to do things with classification to win an advantage is not something that the Paralympic movement can tolerate.
While he was in charge, Javier Gonzalez says the International Paralympic Committee tried to curb the cheating. In 2016, the IPC investigated more than 80 athletes for intentional misrepresentation. It said there wasn't enough evidence to prove any wrongdoing.
We saw some people that could have done misrepresentation, and we tell everybody, we are on the case, and, behave if you have not behaved. They knew that we were on the case, and our classifiers and these had been, instructed to look into these things.
Do you think it puts athletes on notice if nobody's reprimanded?
I think so. I mean, if you cannot reprimand somebody that you need to have proof. I think that's better than nothing.
Javier Gonzalez says there's now a need for an independent classification body.
In my vision, and it's mine, we should create an independent classification organization.
So why didn't you?
Because resources.
Is that good enough?
You need to take certain steps before you get what you want to get, because if not, you will be building a pie in the sky. Maybe now is the time to start to consider the creation of that.
The International Paralympic Committee insists that it's the independent regulator for classification.
It's like how drugs are dealt with. The drug situation, the doping situation is not, the Olympics do not monitor that. And to be truly serious about this, there should be independence in being able to have the checks and balances. There is a problem. Shine a bit of light on it and let's do something about it.
Paralympic sport is facing its biggest test yet. The athletes themselves are waiting to see if the world governing body is capable of cleaning up the games.
I feel sad for the athletes, the ones that miss out on their moment, like I did.
The founders of the Paralympic movement that long ago would be disgusted and rolling in their graves that this is what it's come to. It's greedy, it's cheating, and I would like to question the people that have this greater ability to go, are you proud of yourself? Are you happy to be there?